Good morning. Welcome back to Coffee and Colorful Conversation. When you see this on Wednesday morning, this I will be at a beautiful spa nearby, about 40 minutes from my house, with all of my close friends in Florida, celebrating a belated birthday for myself as well as some of the other girls. It's a much needed self care day. You can imagine when it comes to getting 9 women together, how difficult it is choosing a date. So I always tell you that I never miss my coffee chats, and I didn't plan to start now. So when I know that I'm not going to be available on a Wednesday, I always make sure that I pre record one so that you don't miss out on any of the chat. So thank you for watching this. Even though I won't be able to interact with you, I will be able to bring you some value on this Wednesday. So today I wanted to talk about highlighting techniques. Are they techniques or are they a trend? What is the difference? So when starting out in my journey in hair in 1986, when I was graduating beauty school, foils were just becoming a thing. There was not very many people doing foils. It was more people using a cap. There was these other things that look like, Diva cups. It was these little red cups, and you put it on the hair and you pulled hair through it. And it was basically the beginning of hand painting. The cups kept it off the scalp and the hair kind of shot out of it. So there was that. And I was so thrilled that the cap was on its way out and foil was on its way in, but it was also uncomfortable. You can all relate to the first time you ever did a foil, how awkward your fingers were and how much it was hard to keep the foil on the hair. And you're like, I'm never going to get this. And the difference between myself and a big percentage of the people I went to beauty school with was practice. I just kept doing it. Every time we had free time in school to work on whatever we wanted to work on, I always chose foiling, and I would grab a head, put it on the stand, and I kept timing myself. So my first foil on a doll head, which they don't have hardly any hair, was probably 4 hours or 3.5 hours, something crazy like that. And then the next time it was 10 minutes shorter and 10 minutes shorter and 10 minutes shorter until by the time I graduated, I was able to confidently foil an entire head in probably an hour and a half, which was great. And it was important to be able to have that dexterity and that speed. But all of the things that I use now in my foiling from day to day are not anything that I learned in beauty school. And that's very common. I know now, as a matter of fact, I was at a beauty school not too long ago teaching, and I saw this poor girl sitting at the sink that had a teasy something going on where they went bat crazy, teasing like she was going to, a pageant and a hurricane. Like it was so packed in and so tightly teased that the girl was in tears, and there was 4 girls trying to get the tease out of her hair. It was a mess. And I thought to myself, was that ever necessary in doing whatever they were doing to her hair? Was that amount of teasing ever necessary? I've also shared with you that I flew to Austin, Texas to attend a class with a very popular Instafabulous colorist who I loved her. I followed her for probably a year before I went to see her live, and I could not wait to see her technique in person, and how disappointed I was that the amount of teasing that was done caused the model to shed a lot of hair, and a lot of it was the natural at the root. It wasn't even overlapped blonde ends. It was the new hair here that was so teased that by brushing it out with wet hair and, being a little too rough with it, she lost, 2 big hairballs full of hair. So I don't want to be that colorist that's an old fuddy-duddy that's like, oh, you're just older and you don't get the new trends. But I'm watching on social media, and I would say, 9 out of 10 social media highlighting posts, they're doing this little flick at the root. Like they're taking their section for the foil, and then they're going flick right up here, not starting at the bottom and pushing hair up, just this little flick. And I'm like, is this theatrics for the video that they just want to look cool that it's doing a flick, or is that flick really doing anything? I'm on the fence about the flick. I'm not so sure that that's really doing anything. And when you know how to foil properly, you don't get bleed marks, you don't get slipping and sliding foils, and there's really no need for the flick flick. If you don't want the foil lines showing that are fresh out of the head, you do a quick root shadow. I just did a root shadow on my highlights so that it doesn't look like a noodle coming straight out of my skull. Easy peasy. So I'm not sure if the flicking and the teasing and all the things are to set yourself apart and look and seem different. Or is it, I don't want to do the extra step with the shadow root or the color mount? Or am I just missing out on something fabulous by not thinking that it has merit? So I just wanted to share with you some of the tips that I have found to be useful in my own career. Everything that I share with you is only my experience. I never want to come across as arrogant and, like this narcissist where it's like the only way to do foils and color hair is my way. That's so not my intention. I hope that never comes across that way. But I have had a really awesome level of success as a colorist, as both a salon owner training other colorists, as an educator helping to train and mentor other colorists, and as a colorist myself. So I can only share from my perspective and what I find to be, a pretty and amazing result. And I have my mentors that I like to follow and that I trust, and that when they show me something, I go and try it first before I teach it to anybody else. And a lot of times I'm like, trend. If it's a trend, I pass. If it's a technique, I share. So then you might say, well, what the heck's the difference? For me, a trend is something that's just, it's coming and it's going. It's not going to stick around. It's just something for show. Just something for people to talk about. That's something a little bit different. I'm just not a trendy hairstylist or colorist. I like tried and true. I like predictable. I like, good results that I know are going to be there and there's no mystery and no chance involved. So I am much more of a technique person. So I wanted to share. I loved this post. This was from Wella Education, and it shows very well, in my opinion, the difference between all of the different approaches to foiling. You've got your baby lights, give soft dimension, but they're teeny tiny skinny. Micro slice is a baby light in one sheet. So it's going to be more solid coverage, but still a very delicate, soft dimension. Then you have your teasy lights that are thicker, horizontally thicker, and they're not deep like a hand painted balayage check mark would be. So teasy lights, bold dimension. Balayage in foil, which I don't know when that became a thing because it's not really balayage, but whatever. Balayage and foil, soft, bold dimension, diagonal weave, ribbon dimension, and teasy tip out brightness on the end. So I love this visual. I recommend taking a screenshot of this if you're ever in doubt what your different stitches and techniques are going to produce, and really understanding that there is a difference. What happens is for me, I studied in the 80s. And when I came out of school, I went to become an apprentice for a very busy, awesome hair colorist. She did not have a soft approach. She was kind of a bully, and it was a really painful apprenticeship. It did not last long. Thank God I did really well and I got out of it very quickly. But she was a slicer. Every single client that she had in her chair, she sliced. She was also a multiple bracelet, way more than me. I know I wear a lot, but she would have like 10 bracelets, and they were the kind that move. So the whole time she's foiling, I'm next to her hearing this. And I definitely have misophonia where like unnecessary noises will put me into a total nervous breakdown. So I had to stand next to her and listen to those bracelets all day, every day. And every single client she sliced, she never did weaves, and she always kept everything horizontal. So horizontal, thin slice, foil. So when I look back at that, I think line, line, line. When the woman would pull her hair back, she would have all these lines where the horizontal foil was. If she just tilted ever so slightly into more of a diagonal and did a weave at the hairline, she would not see those lines. but she was trained that way. That was her story. She was sticking to it, and she was, getting good results. She was a really busy colorist. She was booked all the time. She was training all of the new colors. So guess what everyone in the company did? They sliced hair. Guess what happens when you only slice hair over time? Slices are going to create more of a panel. Here's an example of slices versus weave, and this is horizontal versus vertical. So the first mannequin on your left-hand side is done with a vertical placement. So it's creating more of a ribbon. And the one on the right is horizontal. The horizontal is what this person mentoring me was doing, but she was slicing. So as you can see, the doll head on the right is going to have a much heavier roots to ends, overall lighter appearance because it's not letting any of the hair. When you're weaving, you're allowing 50% of the natural hair to be through the hair. When you're slicing horizontally, you're creating a solid panel. So this blonde is going to be a solid sheet of blonde over top of everything. Then the next one over top of everything. So you're going to have this solidness. So all of her clients loved their color day one, loved it up until, 6 weeks. And then they would say, I need to come in and get retouched because my roots are in. But the roots were in because she was creating the root by doing a horizontal slice. So is there a place for horizontal slicing? Absolutely, 100%. When someone is doing a conversion, they went really dark and now they want to go back blonde. A gray conversion is a perfect example. If a client has solid level 6 color she's been doing for 100 years and she's got this much gray and she wants to convert, when you keep going in with a weave, you're leaving behind 50% of that brown hair every single time. That is an example of where slicing for corrective color is going to rid that hair of more of that level 6 color by doing sliced panels to convert to gray. Perfect example of when to use that. A fine hair client doesn't want a whole lot of anything, but wants her brown retouch to appear like a lighter brown. She's sick of the darker brown. She wants it lighter. Thin slices on those top layers, especially on a bob, she's going to have that milk chocolate on top and it's going to look fabulous. And the slice is going to take over the whole entire head where it's going to look like her whole entire head became lighter. Awesome use of that. So understanding if I'm teasing, why am I teasing? So for a tip out, I love to tease for a tip out because I don't want, if I were going to take a whole entire section and paint the ends, I would take a whole entire section and paint the ends. But what's going to happen if I just paint from here down with bleach? If I just want to bump up some of this warmth and I just go from here down to the ends without teasing, what's going to happen? I'm going to have a harsh line right where I started. There's going to be a disconnect. And this is going to be solid where the whole thing is just going to look like a big white patch in the middle of my hair. Where if I tease and I push up away 50% of that hair, then I paint the tip. When this push gets pulled back down, it's going to blend beautifully. That is an amazing, wonderful way to use your tease. That's what I love to use teasing for. However, you saw how I just teased that just using my fingers and it was a good tease. Literally just, you can even weave it first if you want to, weave the hair, then tease. But when I'm doing this, it makes a difference if I'm teasing starting from here, if I'm teasing from halfway, or if I'm doing that little flick, flick that people are doing. Look at the flick, flick. Like, what does that do? I don't get it. But just gently pushing it back to the point where it stays up is all you need to do. It is not a prom updo. Well, that's a bad example because proms don't wear updos anymore, but it's not a special occasion. I have to get this hair so ratted to make this big giant Martin Parsons updo. It's just, let me take away some of that hair so that when I pull it back down after the color, everything blends seamlessly. It's that type of tease. So knowing the difference between an updo tease and a highlighting tease is a big difference, and really understanding that all tease is not the same. The other thing is knowing the texture and density of the hair and knowing how much to put into either your weave or your slice. Sometimes we get on autopilot where we always take the same amount of hair on every single person's head. And anyone who's done that has learned the hard way that it really does make a difference. How many times, because it's so rare, and I was very guilty of this, have you had a virgin head land in your chair? I'm always like, oh my gosh, I drool when I have a virgin. I'm like, this is so exciting. It's been so long. So we tend to take the same amount of space in between our foils for a virgin application of brand new highlights as we do for a retouch of existing highlights. Type into the chat if you're guilty of, yes, that's me. Type in, yes, that's me. If you're like, oh my gosh, I just felt like I foiled her so heavily and I finished it and you can barely see her highlights because it's a virgin head and it's long, thick hair. So knowing the amount and the spacing and the size of the weaves if you're combining, like sometimes I'll do a slice and then I'll alternate with a weave. Sometimes I'll do a slice, skip a big section, and then do another. So a slice, skip slice, a chunky weave, a baby light. When you alternate that, you put texture into the hair that wasn't there before. One of my favorite techniques that's in my Hair Color Secrets Insider library is intentional dimension, making fine hair appear thicker and fuller. You can make someone with fine hair look like they have way more hair and give them this volume look just by the way that you place color into the hair. Sometimes it's about adding color into the hair. Sometimes it's about taking color out. Sometimes it's both. So being creative with your patterns and your why and your intention behind placement of each piece is going to make you stand out as a colorist. A lot of people have reached out to me about foiling questions. So I'm like, get my Fast and Fearless Foiling. It's a standalone course by itself. It's all about foiling. What patterns to do, why to do what, all the things we're talking about now, but in much more in-depth detail. So knowing when to take the color off, the ready, not ready. I love this picture. So a lot of times the picture up top, we're like, oh, she's ready, because we may look at that area above the D in ready and we're like, oh yeah, she's ready. But look at the area above the A. It's not evenly lifted. It's not ready. This is where you're going to take it off. And as soon as you hit the water onto the foil, you're like, crap, it's bright gold. I should have left it longer. And then what? You have to take them to the sink, take it off, wash the hair, dry the hair, and go back and try to find that section again. So it's really important to take the time to open up the foil, take a white towel or a white paper towel, wipe that lightener off, especially if the lightener is blue or lavender based, because when it's blue or lavender based, or even harder is charcoal lightener, it's very hard to read where it is lightened to because it all looks white when you look at it. You're like, oh my gosh, it's so white. Then you hit it with the water and all of a sudden it's 14 karat gold. And now you're trying to overglaze something that's way too gold because it wasn't cooked. It's like taking pasta off the stove when it's not fully ready. You're going to get very al dente, very crunchy pasta. And you're not going to start all over again and put the water on and let it boil and put the pasta in. It's so much easier and better to let it sit and give it 2 more minutes, even when in doubt. Now, don't take this to the extreme and have it snapping off and not be on the head anymore, because there is a small window of taking all of the keratin out of the hair. Remember, a lot of things we forget is what we learned in beauty school. Keratin is seen in the hair as yellow. So when you remove every speck of yellow and you're trying to get these silver and platinum and really bright white colors, you can do that by getting it to palest yellow and then toning to get it more cool, more ashy. But if you go past all of the yellow, the hair is so porous and so compromised that there's nothing left in the hair for it to hold on to the glaze. So if you are in the camp of glazes never last, my client always says it washes out, chances are you're overly bleaching the hair, trying to get it to white from the bleach and not getting it to white from finishing with a glaze to just shift the tonality in the hair. So very important. Another tip that I shared on one of my most popular YouTube videos, if you haven't followed my YouTube, I would love for you to go over to YouTube. It's just my name, Elaine Travis. Would love for you to follow me there. hit the subscribe button, ring the little bell so that you get a notification when I have a new video. But my most popular video on there, my hair is so bad. I got a really bad short haircut. My color is awful. I have my glasses on. I have this weird sweatshirt on. Like, it was not a good day, but it was my absolutely most viewed YouTube video. And I leave it up, even though it's so embarrassing. I look a lot different now than I did then. And I leave it up because I'm like, clearly people are getting value from it. And it's all about tips on foiling. Most of my career, when I had lightener in a bowl and I was doing a foil, if the lightener was starting to dry out and I'm working up the head and I start underneath and I'm probably right up here, I would add more developer, because in my mind, I was like, oh, the developer is going to reenact the lifting process, give it some juice and some energy, because that's what we're taught, that the developer is, you know, the facilitator that gets the lightener to do its job. So I would add more developer to the already existing mixture and keep going. And then I would open my foil and I'd be like, why is that not ready when everything else is? I added the extra developer there. Extra developer actually weakens your bleach mixture. It's been sitting in the bowl. You've been using it probably for 30 or 40 minutes. It's losing its strength. Then you're putting more of the developer in there and you're weakening it even more. I thought the total opposite. So you may be watching this and have been thinking the same thing. More developers, more power. No. Dump that bowl, get a fresh bowl with powder lightener, fresh developer, and keep your consistency the same. So if you did 1-to-1 before, do 1-to-1 again. If you did 1-to-1.5, but thicker product, remember the rhyme, thicker is quicker. So the thicker you make your mixture, if you're someone who's always afraid of bleeds and you like a thick mixture, it's going to be quick. So if you're not a quick foiler and you're making your consistency thicker, you're actually trying to beat the clock. You're racing against yourself. You're making it thick so that you don't have bleeders, but now you have to work that much faster. So if you need to work with a thick consistency, lower your volume of developer so that you're not racing against yourself. Start with a 10 volume, start with a 5 volume. So thicker is quicker. Very, very, very important. In my opinion, you should not be mixing your powdered bleaches with your tint brush. I see it every day on Instagram, on Facebook, at hair shows, everywhere I go. Everybody mixes with their brush. And then their brushes look like, you know, frayed monsters that belong in the garbage, and they're not getting fresh brushes. That lightener, by doing that and mixing the powder and the developer, all of the powder is getting stuck in the bristles. You're not going to get an even mixture. You're ruining your brushes. I prefer to use a rubber spatula to mix everything. Use that, use a rubber whisk, whatever it is that you like to use, but save your brushes by not mixing with the actual brush. What else? Thicker's quicker. The developer, we were taught that, you know, if we want the most amount of lightener or lift out of our lightener, do 40 volume developer. So 40 volume developer will lighten the hair quicker. It doesn't lighten it further than 10 volume, 20 volume, or 30 volume. Another myth that I was taught that I believed for the first 20 years of my career, for a 40 volume, I want her to be really light. 40 volume will come out of the gate really quickly. Think about a horse race where one horse just goes bolting out of the gate and he looks like he's going to kill it in the race. And then he runs out of steam and the guy that started way back blows by him and wins the race. So 10 volume will win the race and get you there cleaner, less warm, and in much, much better condition. So slow and steady wins the race. The 40 volume, you'll be like, oh, holy crap, this is really working quickly. But you'll open up the foil at the end and you're still in that warm caramel, the part of this picture that I said is not ready. This is where 40 volume is going to get you. The bottom picture is where 10 volume is going to get you, but it's going to get you there probably 20, 30 minutes later than the 40 volume. So 40 volume tends to peter out and die, and you have to open up the foils, remix, and reapply. So you're actually giving yourself more work by upping your volume. The only times that I up my volume in my lightener is if I'm doing a flat foil technique that I also teach in my Hair Color Secrets Insider course. It is a technique to make sure that when you're doing corrective lifting, when someone has, I'm looking for a photo here that I usually have in here. Here it is. So when someone has dark color on their hair and you're going in to do a corrective thing, if you put the same volume lightener from roots to ends, you're going to get this result. You're going to get great lift at the new growth where it's all brand new hair. You're going to get blanche in the middle. And then the ends are either going to be really red because they were really black and didn't lift at all. But in this case, they were already pre-lightened. So they're either going to be overly light and ready to snap off or still too dark and too red. So the flat foil technique, you use 3 different strengths of lightener, and then you keep your foil flat and you don't fold it because that would defeat the whole purpose. So that's the flat foil technique. So that's the only time you'll see me change the developer higher than a 10 or 20. That and I foil right on top of my single process touch-ups. So if a client has dimension, if I was a brunette gray coverage, I would put the color on for the gray coverage. I tap it, I set my timer, I mix up my lightener, usually 30 volume. So lightener 30 volume, I put my highlight right on top of the retouch, inside the foil, right on top. The bleach is the balm, the color is a screen door. The balm is going to go right through the screen door. So when I place highlights right on top of a retouch, because it took me time to put the retouch on, the retouch has to sit on the 30 minutes. I'm doing my foils after all of that. I want to make sure that the foils are done when the retouch is done. So there is where I want increased speed, not on a typical highlight. During a retouch and highlight, I want increased speed. And I'm not attempting to take someone to Elsa Blonde over top of a retouch. I know that that's not going to be the best case scenario because it has to eat through that fresh color. So that's when I'll use 30 volume and I end up getting exactly where I want to be by the time the retouch is done and then I have it all done at the same time. So I hope that these tips help you as far as patterns, types of highlighting. If you need more, I would love to have you in the Hair Color Secrets Insider course. I would love to have you even more in the Inner Circle, which is coaching with me. So once you purchase the Hair Color Secrets Insider course, you have the ability to join the Inner Circle. The first month you can join for as little as $1 just to try it on. We have our coaching call this week. It's live coaching with me in a group. We have a great community. It's amazing. So if you feel like you just need a little more mentorship, someplace that you feel safe to ask questions that you may not want to ask coworkers or the owner of your salon or anyone else, that's what I'm here for. This is my passion. This is my life. This is what I do. I'm recording this on a beautiful Saturday when everyone else is at the beach or the pool. I am here sharing hair color so that I didn't miss you on a Wednesday morning. So thanks always for listening. If you're interested in the Insider or anything hair color with me, go to my website, expertcolorsolutions.com. I still have the $47 hair color formulation simplified. That's a great, very popular workshop. You get that to keep for life to go, back to as many times as you want. And we just added a lot of bonus Q&A, frequently asked questions to the $47 course for no extra charge. So I hope that you will check those out and I will see you live next week. Thanks for watching.